Hi everyone, it's Mex-ree. Now, I'm pretty sure this is a problem that you most likely know about, but I want to discuss romance in the gacha community. For starters, I'm going to give a simple explanation of a somewhat popular take on romance in the gacha community. When I scroll down on this list, almost every single mini-movie that you see is romance. There's clearly no diversity in that, and there are certainly many other genres that you can take with your mini-movies. However, as you can see, it's literally all just romance. While yes, I do think this is a problem, I want to give my take on it personally. I don't think the problem is necessarily the romance itself, but I think it's the execution of romance. The execution in almost all these mini-movies is just romance, but bad and unoriginal. I don't want to restrict anyone from using romance in their plots. Cutting off an entire genre like that just isn't fair, especially to those who make really amazing and emotional stories from romance. But I want to encourage those who make unoriginal romance plots to try to make something better out of their content. I don't want to strictly say you cannot use romance plots, and even though I would really love to see other genres in the community, other than just romance every single time, I would never say that you cannot use romance in a plot. What I'm trying to say is that I want the romance to be good. I want the romance plots to not be the exact same every single time. And unfortunately, that's what I'm seeing with almost every single romance plot. Everywhere I look in mini-movies, I always see these similarities in every single one of the romance plots unless they're well executed. One similarity that I see in all these badly executed romance plots is that they all are based off of stereotypes. All the characters are based off of stereotypes at least. And when every single character is based off of the same thing or is the same thing, then it's gonna be really boring and uninteresting. It's usually that one person in the relationship is an overprotective strong person that has a lot of backstory issues and it gives them a super dark past so you feel bad for them, and the other one is a soft, cute person that can't stand up for themselves and needs saving by the overprotective one. No, not all of them are like this, however, that's just an example of a really common stereotype that I see. Just because it doesn't fit in with my example doesn't mean it's not a stereotype, and most of the characters that I see are so dull. A lot of the time the characters don't even fit well together, so they end up just being forced. The relationship is just forced because the characters usually wouldn't work out together. The creator put them together anyway for the sake of the plot though. Another similarity that I usually see is that the characters need each other to be a character. It's like their whole identity is being in a relationship, which isn't realistic whatsoever. People have lives outside of a romantic life, but the character is usually just slapped on with a bad stereotype and a romantic love interest. Characters are more than their romance life and their partner. Another pretty vague similarity that I find is that the characters, the plot, etc. are usually the same but with only a couple different circumstances. The antagonist is always someone that hates the protagonist since they're in love with the love interest that they like, and that's their only motivation. In the end, that just ends up with the antagonist being really stale and uninteresting. The two main characters that fall in love with each other are also, as I said in the first similarity, just based on stereotypes that make them really uninteresting. The setting is usually a high school setting, and if it's not, it's probably a workplace so they can have a plot like, my boss is my ex-husband, or something like that. That's just a simple example, but usually all the plots are really similar but with only a couple differences. There are other similarities that I could get into, but that's a video for another time. Anyways, now that I've really expressed the similarities, I want to get into why I don't think romance is really the problem, but the execution itself. I think it should go without saying that you can make really amazing, heart-wrenching stories with the romance genre. One obvious example in the gacha community would probably be the Music Freaks. I don't want to go into detail since I don't want to spoil anything, but how the romance is done in that series is really well done. You get actually invested in the characters without having to depend entirely on a romantic relationship to care about them. Now, if you compare this to other mini-movies that have the same plot of romance, you'll notice how different it is. The genre could be turned around completely good or completely bad depending on how well it's executed, which eventually just turns into basic storytelling. I do want to recognize that romance is an extremely popular genre in the community, and I do personally think that's a problem. There are so many other genres that I can think of that isn't being utilized by the community, and I really want to see more of them. For example, I'm personally really interested in detective stuff and crime. However, I don't see any of that anymore, or at all in the first place in the gacha community. There are genres like fantasy, thriller, mystery, nonfiction, comedy, and a lot more. However, I barely see any of it because romance is always the only genre that people choose. I think this is really important, especially when your plot doesn't need romance. Cramming in romance in your plot at the last second when it doesn't need it can really take a huge turn for the worse in your mini-movie. I'm definitely really guilty of this though. It's easy to add romance just because it's a really popular thing to do in the community, and our community has a very large history of trends, but if you ever have a chance to not use romance in your plot, don't use it. Just because two people are friends doesn't mean that they have to have a romantic relationship together. People can exist as friends, and forcing them into a relationship for the sake of your mini-movie for having romance makes it really forced. However, despite this, I don't want to limit or say that you cannot use romance in your plots at all. Like I said, I do want to see more diversity in genres, but I really don't want to see so many of the same movies that are all just really badly executed romance drama videos. Honestly, my biggest hope is just that we try to make a change and not make so many badly executed romance plots. It's starting to get extremely repetitive, and so much romance is just kind of making the mini-movie side of our community so stale. Anyways, it's kind of just my take on romance in the gacha community. I know it's really popular to think that romance is really bad, or at least a bit popular, but I think it's just the execution of romance itself. Also, the fact that it's just really overused in general and that other genres exist outside of romance. Anyways, see you in the next video!